Okay, so can God exist? I guess that's the question, whether it's in our minds or outside of ourselves. A little bit of Shakespeare anyway. Jesus, Krishna, Earth Goddess. So, can God exist? Now, before I get into this, I would like you to be adult about this, to not leave. You can if you want. It's not going to offend me, but I'd appreciate it if you don't resort to childish name calling in the comments. Just try to be adult about this. We all have different views, and hey, I'll still watch your videos no matter what your religious views are, and hopefully you'll still watch my other videos regardless of what my religious views are. Okay, so first I'm gonna do some quick symbol analogy, and then we're going to get into can God exist, because it's all relevant. And you saw those two symbols I drew really quick, and they have slightly they looked slightly different, but they have the same meaning, and I'm going to show that really quick. And by the end of this, I think you'll have a better idea of the question, can God exist? Okay, so starting really quick then, imagine we have a timeline, and oops. So here's our timeline. And this is just a symbol, and let's say we're going to give meaning to it. The meaning will be a billion years, or a week. For now, we'll call it a week. And so if I said this represents a week, what would this represent? Or let's call it, let's make it easier. Let's make it 4 days. Okay, so for now, this represents 4 days. And I said, what does this represent, roughly, here? About 1 day. You can kind of visualize that's about 1/4, about 1 day. Okay. I said, well, John really desired to eat an apple, and he decided to eat an apple. I'm hungry. I'm gonna eat an apple. A day later, he eats his apple. You go, okay, well, that's not. I guess that's reasonable, but what does this symbol represent now? If this is 4 days. Well, now we have about 3 days. So John desires an apple, and 3 days later he finally eats one. That's a little less reasonable, wouldn't you say? Waiting 3 whole days before he finally eats something he desires, you start wondering how much did he really desire that thing. Okay, so let's say instead of a week or 4 days, this represents, I don't know, a billion years. Okay, so let's call this a billion years. I'll just do it like that. And then I can do the same thing and say, well, what does this represent? You'll say about 250 million years. Okay? So now, Zeus, because we need an entity that can live that long, and Zeus can live a billion years. He can live forever, I guess. But according to Greek mythology, he can't die. So he decides he wants an apple, and 250 million years he finally eats one. Well, he's a god. Maybe 250 million years is no big deal. You can desire an apple for that long, and hey, no big deal. He finally eats it. But what does this represent? About 750 million years, right? He waits 750 million years before he finally eats an apple, and you think, well, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Why would he wait that long? It becomes unreasonable. You really start to doubt whether he really wanted that apple. Now, suppose we change the symbol. Now, what would this mean? If the flat lines represented end, this represents never ending, this would mean eternity, right? Or, oops, or infinity, however you want to look at it. Eternity, according to American Heritage Dictionary, and eternity is a symbol which we have to give meaning to, and the dictionary does that, and it means an infinite amount of time. So here we have a timeline without a beginning or ending, so this symbol represents an infinite amount of time. So now I want to know, what's the difference then between these two symbols? Well, despite the fact that they look a little different because I'm drawing them slightly different. But what's the difference between these two symbols just visually? Before, it would have been easy. If this was a billion years, this represents 250 million, this represents 750 million. Well, we can't put numeric values to these because all we have to do is stretch the symbol, and you can see they're identical. So the answer is that what's the difference between these two symbols besides the visual differences? They mean the same thing. They're identical. You just have some point, some marker on an infinite line. And it really doesn't matter where you put it, it means the same thing because there is an infinite amount of time or space on both sides of that part anyway. So now we have a problem here. We have God who is eternal, and an eternal God has to exist eternally, which means he has to exist in eternity. So this would represent the time frame which God lives on. That is within eternity, infinite time. And if I said, well, he decided he wanted to create the world. Okay. What would be the difference if I said, well, he decided he wanted to create the world? What does this mean? How long did he wait before he... Well, let's find out. Here's when he finally created the world. Here's when he finally created the world. Doesn't really matter because any dot you put on the infinite line means the same thing. How much time went before? See, once you make something happen, put a dot there, and say, this is when the world was created. This is when he met his desire. And if you say he didn't have a desire, that is, he didn't desire to create, then why do we exist if, indeed, we were created? That's kind of weird, right? So if he had no desire to make us, we wouldn't exist. If he had a desire to make us, then he makes us. So let's just call that point then when he finally does that there. So that's when he made us. Now, there's an infinite amount of time then before that point because he lives in eternity. So he didn't just wait 750 million years to reach his desire or to try to fulfill his desire. He waited an infinite amount of time. Infinite amount of time before he finally decided, you know what, I think I'm going to make the universe. I'm going to create time. I'm going to create everything. How unbelievable is that? If it was unbelievable to wait 750 million years to fulfill a desire, how unbelievable is it to wait an infinite amount of time before you decide to fulfill your desire? Now, again, we have to define words, and words mean things. So since God is eternal, he has to exist in eternity, unless you want to redefine what eternal means, and that's fine. Make up a new word, a new symbol, and say that's what God is, and give a definition to it, and leave it in the comments, and then I'll address that. But as far as the eternal God who created the universe, well, he seems impossible so far because he had to wait an infinite amount of time to fulfill some desire, or to say anything. That is to say that if he exists outside of time, let's say this is time, so time has a beginning. We don't know if time will have an ending, so actually we'll change the symbol. Okay, we'll call this 13.7 billion years, or 6,000 years, or 10,000 years, whatever, however long you believe the universe has been here. And we don't know how long it's going to go on, so I put an arrow. Maybe I can put an arrow question mark. We don't know how long it'll go on. Maybe time will stop one day. Okay, so if this were the case, then we're saying what's this out here? This is outside of time, I guess, where God exists, outside of time. And so we're saying outside of time, there's no time he created. Well, then how could he have created something since he's outside of time? Created is a past tense word. He has to be creating something. Anyway, hopefully you can see the problem here. And, I'm going to make more videos. I'm going to put it in a playlist, and I'll have the same title, Can God Exist? And I'll go through different things like this. So if you would like to comment on this, please be adult about it. If you'd like to make a video response, that's fine too. Again, I just ask that you be adult about it. If you're not adult about it, I probably won't respond to you. So hopefully, I don't get angry people at me, because I don't want to anger people. I just want to show something that makes little sense to me. That is, a God who exists in infinite time, or outside of time, whichever way you want to look at it, somehow was able to create the universe. It seems like an impossibility to me. I would say it is impossible, but I'll use the more objective term and say, well, it seems, or subjective term, sorry, it seems to me. Anyway, yeah, so go ahead, rate the video, and leave comments, and maybe we can continue a little discussion about it, and let me know what you think, and if you think this is how you get around this problem, that you have a God who exists in infinite time, and he waited an infinite amount of time before he supposedly fulfilled his desire, and that was to create the universe. Okay, so there it is.